Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're going to talk about the Richmond Sector Qualifier. So without further ado, let's go into it. Just want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. So a couple of facts about the tournament. It was held in Richmond, United States, and it was a great stream set up by the Late Night Gaming crew in collaboration with many other content creators. Too many to count, but I think there was like the Red Raptor, which was there for a while, and then they had the TTI guys, Rebel Trader from you probably know from Take the Initiative. So loads of different people collaborated, and it was a tournament of 585 players, which makes it the biggest Star Wars Unlimited tournament ever organized. So congratulations to the American for holding such a massive tournament. It's great to see that we are beating the records of the biggest tournaments over and over again. That means that the game is growing. Obviously, that those new series of tournaments from organized by FFG, of course, are extremely helpful for growing those numbers. But it's nice to see that those numbers are growing, and my little finger tells me that this might be the case again next weekend with Lille, which is going to be the first regional qualifier. So really exciting to see that, and this is why there's a lot of great things to learn from this event. So first of all, just the raw numbers of the different decks that were played. The most played deck of the tournament was Sabine with 60 players. Then we go Quinlan's 54, Cad Bane 42. This is not a surprise if you look at my tier list of the most what I expect to be the most played deck in the meta. Literally, I put those three decks as number 1, number 2, number 3. So in S tier. So this is not a surprise. It is though on even with Han Solo, which definitely also sees a lot of play. In my tier list, I was separating Han Solo in a different kind of Hans. Hans is definitely, while basically you almost always play Cad with red, Quinlan with red, and Sabine with ECL. Han, however, is split across many different archetypes, which are quite different from one another. So it's a little bit hard to say that there is 42 Han green, if that makes sense, because there's probably a lot of different Han. And then we see a lot of Anakin as well, a 39 Anakin. Anakin obviously got a massive boost of power. With Colossus, we got a chance to talk more about it. It's a really, really strong deck. Then Luke Skywalker, obviously the Luke and the Vaders are really, really amplified by the fact that you get a chance to win a showcase, which is, and those showcases are extremely valuable. So not surprised to see Luke and Vader being heavily inflated. Then Gar Saxon, which are also expected to see a lot of plays. And then we got Piet, and then we got Qi'ra, which we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about it. So, and then Boba Fett, finally we see, even though Boba Fett is still overplayed in my opinion, we see at least the numbers of them decreasing a little bit compared to in the previous set. Obviously the ban of triple dark raid really hurt the deck a lot. So yeah, these are basically the raw numbers. So let's jump now into the percentage. And as you can see here on the percentage here, so you see the most played deck is only representing 10% of the field. It's actually a little bit more than 10% because then it's 60 deck out of 585. But anyway, I'm being nitpicky here. 10% is for the most played deck is the dream for trading card game. If the most played deck is only representing 10% of the meta, that means that you have an extremely healthy meta. So this is great news for Star Wars Unlimited already. And then you can see that the rest of the split is very, very even. There's a lot of different, there's a wide variety of different decks that I've seen play. So I had the chance to intervene during the stream to kind of give my impression about what I think about the US meta. And there's like a major difference with the European meta is that the fact that I think Bosk is extremely underrepresented. Only 2.7% of people decided to bring Bosk to this tournament, and then we only have 3% of Palpatines as well. So these are like those two massive anomalies in terms of representation that we're seeing here. In my opinion, those decks deserve a far bigger market share than this. Those decks are really, really powerful. and they deserve, like, I know that Bosk is obviously always underplayed because it's a hard control deck. People don't necessarily like to run this kind of decks, and even less so in such a massive event when you have to play so many rounds. It can be very daunting to play so many rounds, and whenever you play hard control, obviously you're gonna have very long rounds. With all that being said, I still think Bosk is that I completely understand, but the deck is so incredibly good that I think it deserves way more than 2%, 7%. I think, in my opinion, it deserves at least a good 5% to see play. And Palpatine is kind of the same idea as well. It does close out game much faster than Bosk. It does have a bad matchup into Sabine, which is representing 10% of the meta. But 10% is not that much. It means that basically on average, if you're playing day one, we're playing 8 games, you actually are only going to be encountering less than one Sabine on average. So it's really not bad of odds. And then the rest of the decks you're going to be facing are pretty much just good matchups. Some less so than others, but I think that the deck is very well positioned into the meta, and despite Sabine seeing so much play, because yes, Sabine is really bad, but then everything else is good, and Sabine is only representing 10%. So this is a really good gambit to go for Palpatine, I feel like, in the current meta. So very surprising to see only 3% of people deciding to take that gambit. So it's a little bit kind of so this is kind of like the biggest differences compared to the European meta. You're seeing a lot more mid-range decks, and you're going to see a lot more. Sabine has always been very popular in the US, so you see Sabine seeing more play. You're seeing a lot more mid-range deck at the expense of those more like control-y late game. The most control-y deck that actually saw a significant amount of play in this event was the Qi'ra Green, which we'll talk about later on in the video. So this is the top 64, so everybody who managed to day 2. So the rules were a little bit different than from Liverpool and Milan, and also Denver, where in this case, anybody in the top 64 was getting into day 2. This means that there's people who went X2 who actually could not make it to day 2. So arguably it was harder to make it to day 2, but at least you didn't end up in that situation where you would make to day 2, but then had no chance to compete. And you had no chance to make it to top 8 after that. So it does make sense. Also, they played one less round on day 1, only 8 rounds on day 1, and 4 rounds on day 2, instead of the 9 rounds we were playing on day 1 in Liverpool, and the 4 rounds they were playing in day. So the selection was not as deep as the one that we had in European tournaments. So this is basically what we had in the second meta. As you can see here, Quinlan was the most represented deck of the second day, 70.2%. Then Qi'ra represented 14.1%. So this is definitely the outlier here, because Qi'ra was not that represented here in the day 1 meta. If you take a look at it, Qi'ra was, let me take a look. It's not in order, so I have to be a little bit, where is she? Qi'ra. Yeah, she was only 3.8%. So a huge jump in representation for Qi'ra, which can be explained by 2 phenomena, which are the first phenomenon. I think the reason why Qi'ra did so well was that she was the deck that was picked by the K2OD team. Obviously, K2OD is by far the most influential content creator in the US. Obviously, almost everybody from the team decided to pick the deck. They are obviously very good players, so obviously when so many good players decide to pick one deck, it does skew the metric in favor of that deck, almost regardless on how good the deck is, because you get so many people piloting the deck. And as I often say, in Star Wars Limited, the pilots is more important than the deck, especially in such an open meta. So if you're going to have so many good players running a deck, it's going to kind of skew the metric in its favor. Not only that, they also have an influence that goes beyond the team, where there's a lot of people who are in their Discord who are going to be seeing the list, and they're also going to decide to pick it up as well. So you have basically all the K2OD followers and the K2OD team itself running the deck, and obviously the followers are also people who are heavily invested in Star Wars Unlimited. Therefore, they also tend to do well in tournaments. So this kind of things kind of skewed in favor. Obviously, the other phenomenon as well is that, as we saw on the metagame breakdown previously, Bosk and Palpatines were heavily underrepresented, and both of those decks do extremely well against Qi'ra. So this is kind of like, especially Palpatine, but So this is another phenomenon which kind of like skews the which helps Qi'ra having such a great result. And there's also a couple of innovation in the deck that are very interesting, which I'll talk about in the video as we get into the list. But yes, definitely a few innovations about the deck, which also obviously made it a really, really strong deck. Then we got Han Solo, which also did well, and Sabine, we also converted pretty well also into day 2. And then we got Cad Bane, converted very well. And then a big surprise, I think, of this event is Darth Vader, Victor Squadron Leader, 6.3%. So there are multiple Darth Vaders. This is the Vader 4 from the new set, which managed to make it to day 2. And that's obviously by itself a huge performance. And this is by far the biggest performance we've seen from this leader. This is leaders as definitely, it is, in my opinion, one of the leaders that benefited the most from the Django ban. This deck was unplayable as long as Jega was legal, but now that Django is out, this deck is definitely showing its true color. It's a deck that I played against quite a bit when the set first got spoiled, and it was a deck that was legitimately very powerful. But yeah, once again, Django just shut it down so hard that it was basically unplayable. But now it can shine again, and this leader is definitely doing very well. So this is really cool. Then we got Anakin, and then it's a healthy spread of a wide variety of different decks. So this is a really cool, relatively healthy day 2 as well. Nothing just going completely bananas. So this is the conversion rate basically between, so the blue line is the representation in percentage on day 1 and its representation on day 2. So basically if you have a low blue bar and a high red bar, that means that you are overperforming. So the biggest overperformer was Qi'ra, as I explained earlier. Lots of great players playing it, a really favorable meta for Qi'ra. So you got yourself a pretty good differential here. Quinlan Vos also overperform. A lot of very good players running it. Han Solo overperformed. Sabine slightly. Cad Bane as well significantly. The Vader 4 overperform. Anakin Skywalker actually underperformed. Then you got the Han Solo from sets 2 actually widely overperformed. You can see there's actually a really big difference between how much Han Solo 2 soul play and how much it performed, so that's a really good. Then underperformed, basically we got, as usual, Boba Fett almost all the time underperformed this deck. So many people said this is a great deck. It's such a bad deck. Like, it's, once again, it is a competitive deck. It is competitive, but it is so overplayed. It is the most overplayed deck in the history of Star Wars Limited, in my opinion. And it once again underperforms again. Bosk also slightly underperformed. Not a lot of... the sample size is very small, so it's hard to say anything. And then we saw Vader, obviously Vader and Anakin and Luke Skywalker. Where is Luke? We don't even see Luke. I don't know where the Luke has been. But anyway, Vader obviously underperformed. The people are just playing it literally just to get the showcase. Gar Saxon is the biggest surprise to me. I think the deck is pretty good, but it widely underperformed here in this set. Maybe the matchup into Qi'ra is just too bad for Gar Saxon. Too many people running Qi'ra was a problem for it, and that's pretty much all the conclusion we can draw from this. Most played card in the top 64. That's another interesting metric. By the way, all those metrics are put together by Jonathan from the Bolton Network. He has a new kind of app that allows him to gather all this data, and that's great. So if you're a tournament organizer interested to pick it up, just send him a message, and you'll be able to he'll be happy to share it with you. So here we see here's a Surprise Strike, the most played card. I mean, Surprise Strike is secretly one of the best cards in Star Wars Limited that nobody talks about. It's just an auto include in most yellow decks. It's such a great card. Then Sham Syndulla, second most played card. This is not a surprise because Sham Syndulla is almost an auto include in every single red deck, but it is a sideboard card for the most part, so this kind of like skews the data. Of course, the data doesn't make a difference between the main deck card and the sideboard card, so obviously this being played everywhere in the sideboard, played everywhere in the main deck doesn't mean the same. No Good to Be Dead here as the third most played card is a bit more surprising to me. No Good to Be Dead, in my opinion, is a very good card, but it's not like crazy good. I mean, the meta is very aggro tempo, so I guess No Good to Me is really good, but Cassian, that's not a surprise. I mean, red-white is very popular right now, so Cassian is one of the best red-white card in the game. So yeah. And then Fang Fighters saw a lot of play as well, a lot of anti-upgrades. Anti-upgrades is very, very strong. There's a lot of pilots. Then the Tarkin Town, the Takedown, Confiscate, and so on. So very interesting. This is our top 8. So in the top 8, we have 1 Qi'ra, 1 Anakin. So 1 Qi'ra green, 1 Anakin Colossus, 1 Cad red, 1 Quinlan red, 1 Han yellow, 1 Han green, 1 Sabine ECL, and 1 Quinlan red. So this is like basically the top 8 before the top 8 basically. So this is the top 8 before the top cut is played. So this is what happened basically, I think, after day 2. This was the final standing. So congratulations to all the players who made it that far. This is obviously a huge grind. And as you can see here, a pretty healthy spread. Just 2 Quinlan and 2 Han Solo, but then the rest is pretty healthy. It's pretty diverse. And those 2 Han Solo decks are very, very different. How are we going to get over? So a very healthy top 8 as well. And to be honest, extremely expected. All those decks, we've talked about them to death. Like I put in S tier Sabine, Quinlan, and Cad Bane, and I think I put in tier 1 Quinlan, Han, and Cad Bane, and then I put Qi'ra in Anakin and Han in 1.5. So at like everybody, I was expecting all those decks to do very well. So there's actually not even a single outlier in this top 8. The top 8 is is entirely made of very, very competitive deck. There's not a single kind of outlier or kind of like random deck that managed to sneak in the top 8 in this one. It's just pure meta decks that we are seeing right now. So before we get into the top 8 list in more details, I just wanted to give an honorable mention to this Vader deck, which was won by I forgot the name. I'll just double check the name of the person. Mr. Rapscallion. That's probably not his real name, but that's what I have here. And this is an old space Darth Vader yellow deck. Very, very interesting. We've seen a wide variety of different Vader decks, but nothing come even close to this deck that is entirely made of top 8 of space units. Usually even the very heavy space deck do have a couple of ground units to kind of mix it up, especially in the early stage of the game. Definitely a deck that caught a lot of people by surprise, I would say. And this deck is basically managed to make it on top 25, which is a very, very good performance. I think we see a lot of stuff that we expect from the Vader decks, like obviously the Victor Leader, a lot of 2-drops in space in order to maximize the chances of being able to activate Vader's ability on turn 1, swarm the board into space, capitalize on it with Victor Leader, and then deal a huge amount of damage by attacking with all the units, and then tempo things out with No Good to Me Dead, couple of interaction with Barrage, get the huge turn with the Vader Deploy, and get to town. I think the major innovation of this deck, a card that I've never seen before, and I think is a great innovation for the deck, is the 3 copies of Clone Combat Squadrons in the main deck. This deck abuses Clone Combat Squadrons so hard, making this card easily a 6/6 for 4 in space, and can get much bigger than this. I think this was a great addition to the deck, and probably something that makes a big difference. A couple of other cards that were very interesting. We saw the Sanctioner Shuttle, which is a card that is really strong because you almost always have coordinate with this. You get yourself a space unit, and you get rid of an enemy 2-drops, huge tempo swing. We got the Death Space Skirmisher, another way to kind of put a body on the board and exhaust and kind of interact and slow down the opponent. So yeah, just a really nice deck, very well put together, with a lot of chances to go for double 1-drop opening, which increase by a lot your chances to be able to activate Vaders and just swarm the board in space. I think it's a deck that is very counterable. I think there's a lot of stuff that can completely ruin this deck, but it is nevertheless a deck that can take people by surprise, and I think this is exactly what happened. I think people were not expecting a deck like this, and a deck like this that takes you by surprise can be very strong. Once again, it's very easy to counter. Just go run some AoE, some bombing runs, some Snoke, some like a lot of like any like like obviously Barrage, all those cards are just so good against this. But once again, and also Confiscate, Upgrade Removal to get rid of Vader is such a massive negative tempo swing. But it's a deck that if you don't expect it, it's gonna roll over you, and this is exactly what happened. This is why this guy did such a great performance. So, well done. Now we get into the top 8, and we're gonna start off with the deck of Ben, who was running a Quinlan Tarkintown deck. The deck is extremely classic, like extremely by the book. It's nothing crazy, everything just textbook. Quinlan running a lot of 2/2 shielded units, probably for the mirror match, but also because it's just a solid card. And yeah, it's only 2 copies of Surprise Strike is probably my biggest surprise, because I think this card is so good in this deck. And only 2 copies of Red 5 is also surprising, because Red 5 is very strong. He's running all Osaka Qi'ra, so some proportions that are a little bit kind of out of the ordinary, but other than this, it's very much a very classic version of Quinlan. And the sideboard is also what you would expect. Just surprised to see the Overhang Tank. I mean, I know the Americans really like that card. Even though in the Django meta, we saw this card seeing heavy amount of play in the US. In Europe, nobody plays that card, so it's very that is kind of like an interesting fact. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. Moving on, we got Mephisto running his Cad Bane Tarkintown, a very solid deck that we've seen, that we were expecting to be really good. I think it's a deck that is even more well positioned in the US meta, because so few people play control, but it probably did struggle against the Qi'ra decks though. Nevertheless, it's a deck that I think is very solid, and this version is once again relatively classic. The only kind of originality is the Houndstooth. I think the 2 copies of Houndstooth is the only thing that I can call kind of different from what we have. We have a version that runs Jabba the Hutt with a toolbox of tricks, with the Bamboozle, the Sneak Attacks, the Waylays, and the McClunkies. Yeah, this is pretty much a very classic version of Cad Bane. Not much to say about it. It has the Sham Syndulas in the sideboard, the Lurking TIE Phantoms in the sideboard as well. So yeah, this is pretty classic. Then we got the Qi'ra Data Vault deck. That's a big portion of the K2OD crew brought, and John Tara is the only survivor of this in top 8. A player that usually play aggro decks, and but he decided this time around to run the list, the control list. This is a soft control deck, but to be honest, this version is definitely leaning towards the control side. And I'm really delighted to see Tada running 2 copies of Traders. Back in the days, even before the release of the game, I remember having a huge debate with him, talking about Traders. I really thought Traders was one of the best green card. Was really a great card, especially in Spark of Rebellion in set 1. And Tada would tell me that this card was very mid, that he didn't find was very good. And I'm really delighted to see him making such a massive performance with 2 Traders, not even in his sideboard, but in his main deck. So it's kind of fun to see that. So Traders is interesting because it's really good, because of it's a really great counter to all the pilot leaders. However, it has a great weakness, is that obviously because people run a lot of pilots, people run a lot of upgrade removals. So that means that people are going to be running Disabling Fang Fighters. We saw Disabling Fang Fighters being one of the most played card in the game, in the top 64. With that being said, I think in this case it's fine, because Qi'ra does not really run that many upgrades. So in this case, people kind of maybe side out the upgrade removal against you if they don't see it, and then you can catch someone by surprise with the Traitorous in your deck. Obviously, upgrade removal can still be useful against the shield of Qi'ra, but yeah, I think they were kind of like trying to caught people by surprise in the Traitorous, and then siding it out if people see it. That's probably what they were probably doing, which is a classic way to run Traitorous, and I think if you're running this way, it's an excellent card. So the rest of the deck is, as I said, it's really leaning toward the control side. He's even managed to run the Charlesen, which is kind of like surprising. Usually Charlesen is not so great in green decks because you're running too many green cards, especially expensive green cards. But they managed to make it work, and they play enough blue cards to make it work. And obviously Charlesen is an amazing card if you can run it, especially against Sabine. The big innovation of the deck, of course. So the first innovation is like the heavy control side. Surprised to see Devastator or Gunship still seeing play in the deck. I mean, I guess it's really good with Qi'ra, and because you're running Data Vault, you get to run 10 extra cards, so you can definitely afford. Only 2 copies of No Glory Only Result is surprising to me. I think this card to be incredible in the current meta. It's so good against so many problematic cards. We talk about Chewbacca, we talk about K2SO, we talk about, of course, there's just so many problematic cards that No Glory Only Result is amazing against. So only 2 copies of it is a bit weird. It's really good against Super Laser Technician. Like, it just does so many things very well. So, but nevertheless, it's they're running it, but not as a 3-of. I mean, he's running the 3rd copy in the sideboard, to be honest, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, so that's the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. It's heavy blue. The biggest innovation is obviously the base. Qi'ra previously were running either the 30 HP base or ECL. I always thought running ECL in Qi'ra was very dangerous, because if you don't find a good way to use ECL, having 5 less HP on your base is such a big blow. But here we're going into Data Vault. So Data Vault, the inconvenience of Data Vault is that you have to run 10 extra cards, which makes it more difficult to find the best card of your deck. And there's always a card or two which are the best card in your deck in a specific matchup, and running Data Vault reduces your chance to find a specific card. In my opinion, and something that Data Vault is a great card if you're running a deck that doesn't rely on running a specific cards to win the game. Qi'ra is a deck that doesn't rely on the specific cards to win the game most of the time. Therefore, as opposed to, for example, a deck like Han Solo, that Han Green, that really wants to get the resupply on turn 2, and reducing your chance to do so is terrible for the deck. Qi'ra is not in that situation. She doesn't rely heavily on running ramp. I mean, it's obviously good if you have it, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. So it's a deck that can run Data Vault. It is obviously an inconvenient, but then you also get 3 extra HP, which is huge. So I think this is kind of like the big innovation. Is it going to be a thing that was only a thing in this tournament because you had all the K2OD crew running it? Or is it something that's going to persist? We're going to find out. But this is definitely something very interesting. Data Vault also makes the hard control matchup slightly better, because you get yourself 10 extra cards, which makes you harder to mill, which is kind of nice. On the other hand, it also reduces your chances to find the vigilances. So there's some give and takes in. There's a plan here against hard control with the 2 Relentless and the 3 Palpatine's Return. But this can be countered by... but now that hard control runs an Annihilator, the Relentless plan is not as good as it used to be. So, anyway, so it's a really cool deck, and obviously we got... it's a really cool deck, and it's obviously a very solid deck. It's not so different from the Qi'ra we know and love. It's pretty much the same deck, but just running a bit more control-y with the 3 Super Laser Blast, because it's more control-y as well, because I think playing a control deck works better with Data Vault, because the longer the game goes, the less it matters that you're running a 10 extra card, because you got more chances to draw the right cards you need. And obviously, the fact that you have more HP makes you more defensive as well. So it is tilting the deck a bit more towards control with the Super Laser Blast, 3 Super Laser Blasts in the main deck. Awesome. Moving on now to the Han Solo from, sorry, I forgot the name of the person, I'm so sorry, running Han Solo Yellow, and he was running a pretty version of Han Solo that was fairly similar to the one that we saw dominating the set 3 meta. So this deck, as you can see, is not so different. It's basically replacing the good old DJ that was banned by Ezra, and then you got a couple of new cards from the new set with Ahsoka and the Mandalorian, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much a set 3 Han Solo right there. Runs a Bamboozle because it's really good into the meta with loads of pilots, and that's about it. It's pretty much what you would expect from a Han Yellow. We're not embracing the whole vehicle theme. We saw a lot of people kind of leaning toward the vehicles with running like the Falcons and then running the new Han Solo. This deck doesn't do that. It just runs the good old classic Han that we know and love. which is a deck that is still very good, as you can see. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's still very solid. And this is a pretty solid list that if you really loved this deck and still want to run it, it's pretty much what you would expect. Nice to see the Mandalorian making an appearance here. It's such a solid card that gives you some really good tempo as well as giving you a massive unit on the board. So this is a really cool deck. Running the full 3 LC7 and Crafty Smuggler as well. So running a lot of 2/2 shielded units. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Really cool. This is the list from the top 4. We have the Han Green run by Alex. And he was running a very, very interesting version of Han Green. So Han Green has been played like kind of a mid-range kind of value deck. This is not a value deck at all. It is a very, very aggressive. It runs the full package of not 6 but 9. So we got like 9 turn 1 play in space with the 6 Falcons and the Stolen 80 Hauler, which is by far the biggest innovation of this list, like a biggest differentiation of this list compared to the regular Han Green. So it's a very, very aggressive. The idea is very, very much to race you and to kill you very, very quickly by putting down a turn 1 play in space, then either ramp or put a pilot on that space unit to put tremendous amount of pressure on you, and then ramp into Han Solo, get into the double ramp into U-Wing reinforcements to get like a Han Solo or an Enfys Nest. Not running a lot of 7-drop, but once again you can just put multiple smaller units instead of running one big unit. It's completely fine. Then we got the full package of Chewbacca to go, of course, with all those space units. Only 2 copies of Blue Leader is probably the biggest surprise to me, because Blue Leader is such a great card in this deck. It's so flexible. It's so incredibly flexible, and it's very good against Sabine, which has historically been a bad matchup for Han Green. But obviously this deck is quite different from the traditional Han Green we used to see, so I don't know for that specific version. I have no idea what is a good or a bad matchup because it's so different. It runs a 3 Surprise Strikes, and runs a 3 Ultra DF-44 blasters. So it is really, really much a very, very aggressive version of the deck. It has a plan against control here. As the sideboard, we got the Salvage, Home 1 into Chewbacca, kind of like shenanigans that are really, really good against hard control. 1 Confiscate in the main, 2 more Confiscate in the sideboard, because upgrades are really, really strong against Han Solo, especially those that cannot be waylaid. And that's pretty much the deck. Really, really cool. Not running Ahsoka as well, so really doesn't care about value. Just want to aggressively attack you. Moving on to the Anakin Skywalker Colossus deck that managed to make it into the top 8, which is very different from the one of Qi'ra that managed to make top 8 in Liverpool. Qi'ra was running the deck with notably Stella Guerrera to have like huge amount of card advantage to kind of counterbalance the Colossus. And you would imagine that in the meta dominated by Quinlan, you would imagine that card advantage engine would be the way to go for the deck, but this time this Anakin player decided to play it very differently, with a build that is much more based on going all in on the Anakin. He got the Shamsindula in the main, which I'm sure has been excellent against Qi'ra, allows it to ramp into an Anakin faster. We got the Jada's lightsaber to take advantage of Anakin's body, and we got 2 copies of Bravado to be able to untap Anakin and slap the opponent massive slaps in the face. I've called this deck the Power Slapper of Star Wars Unlimited, and this version embodies that even more so than my own version of the deck. We got, of course, some protections from Anakin, and some card advantage engine for the early stage of the game. We'll also see the Outer Rim Outlaws in the main deck. Is also a major innovation. It's really, really good against a lot of people who run 3/5s, because you run this card and then you can use Anakin's ability and you can trade with 3/5s and you keep this unit alive. So that's a really, really interesting innovation if you're expecting a meta with a lot of 3/5s. And then the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. 1 copy of Resolute. This one I have a harder time explaining. It was okay I mean, I guess it's really good against the new Vader 4. the new Vader like Space Swarm deck. But outside of this, I don't really see where this card would be any good. So if you guys have any more information about this, I'll take it. And yeah, so as you can see, this version doesn't play a lot of late game. No Krayt Dragon in the main. Not a lot of late game overall. Not a lot of removal either. It's the advantage of not running Stella Guerrera is that you don't have to run as many tactics in your deck, which makes more space for other stuff. So it's kind of nice. While really the version that Qi'ra was running and the version that I'm running as well with Stella Guerrera definitely is much more based on trying to produce value. So this version is kind of like of producing value and kind of counteract the starting with only 5 cards. Probably a version that does horribly against control, but it doesn't really care because nobody was playing control anyway, so what do you care? And so probably a good meta call in there. And yeah, just trying to emphasize on really emphasizing on ending the game early with Anakin. So it's a risky bet because if people manage to kill the Anakin, then the deck becomes a lot worse, but definitely an interesting take on the deck. And once again, it's not right or wrong, it's just a different way of playing the same leader, a different way to play the same archetype, basically. Finally, we get into the finalist here. The finalist was the the Quinlan Red of Mikael, and his deck was pretty much what you would expect. Very, very classic version. He's running the Guerrillas. I think the main difference between his version and the previous version is that he's running Guerrilla soldiers in the main, which has worked out pretty great for him. And he's also running 2 Fang Fighters in the main as well, on top of the Bamboozle. So really, really prepared against upgrades in general. And yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. So yeah, not much to say about this. Really, really good deck, obviously. Moving on, we got our champion. And this time, finally, Sabine Green takes a big win in Star Wars Limited. Sabine ECL has been meta since even before the game was released. It's a deck it's one of the only deck that has been meta since the very beginning of the game and still is meta today. So you could argue the Qi'ra Green is pretty much just an evolution of Krennic Green, which was meta from the very beginning of the game as well, but it's a different leader. This time, like really specifically Sabine ECL, same leader, same base combination. This deck has been played since the very beginning of the game. Has never had anything banned in it, by the way. Probably the best deck in the game that has nothing ever been banned from it. And only today, this is the first time Sabine ECL wins a major tournament. What I mean by a major tournament is a tournament that has more than 200 players. And there's been quite a few, especially with the we had quite a few tournaments that were 200 players over. Sabine ECL never won it and never even did great performances. Sabine ECL always struggled to make major performances in big tournaments. It always kind of fell off a lot. And also, it's a deck that has heavily underperformed in many, many big tournaments. But finally, it's nice to see such a great deck finally picking up a massive win. It had to happen in the US, of course, because Sabine ECL is a lot more popular in the US than it is in Europe. And what to say about this version? So this was piloted by William, which played really, really, really well. I have to say this was not a really great meta for Sabine. As I said, not many Palpatine and a lot of Quinlan, which is a slightly disfavorable matchup. But if you want to learn how to play Sabine against Quinlan, I really encourage you to look at the games where William runs it. Really, really, very well played. And an absolute masterfully played the deck. Sabine ECL, contrary to people's belief, is not an easy deck to play. There's a lot of subtle little things that you have to get right. And so this deck, what can you say about it? Well, it runs only 2 Darksabers, which is definitely not usual. Most Sabine players nowadays has a huge consensus towards saying that Darksaber is a 3 of in the deck. Decide to only run a 2 of. I think this is a kind of a safer play, to be fair, because Darksaber, even though it is a card that just wins game by itself, it's also a card that is very risky. There's a lot of upgrade removal in the meta, and it is also a card that needs to be specifically played at a very specific moments, and if you don't have it, then it's kind of a bit of a bummer. So, running the 2 Darksabers, running only the 2 Chewbacca's, makes up for it with a timely intervention, which were absolutely amazing in all the games we've seen. I think Timely Intervention is really going to start to become like an absolute a must include in Sabine. When well played, this card is simply amazing. Sabine Masterpiece also did perform extremely well. This card is so important to Sabine because it's the only card that can beat a 3-4 in space, which there's plenty of. One of the big difference between the set 3 meta and the set 4 meta is that there's so many more 3-4s in space, and Sabine does such a great job against them. You open up with a green unit, whether it's his Luke, Marine, or A-Wing, and then you ECL into Sabine Masterpiece, giving it a +1/+1 counter. She'd stay alive, and she stays alive, and she represents a huge threat that needs to be killed, but it already has done its job. It's such a great way to use ECL early on in the game and get yourself so far ahead. So this is a great card. Love the Metal Ceremony, of course, very good in a 4th throw meta. Having something that you can throw for 0 is always great, and obviously it's a card that has always been solid in Sabine anyway. The deck is pretty classic. There's once again a couple of shuffle in the numbers, but the deck is very much what you would expect, and I think it's a very solid deck. So congratulations to William. It was really well played for him. Before we get into the rest of the video, I just want to say that No Glory only result is at €4.42 on card market. It's a very important card in the meta. If you want to play anything blue-black, you need your 3 of No Glory only result. So what have we learned from this tournament? What are the main learnings that we have? The first one is like, there's a huge coming out for Data Vault. We talked about Data Vault into Qi'ra, but I think Data Vault is so good in so many other different decks. Basically, any deck that doesn't care about drawing a specific card, plays a green base, and doesn't run ECL, obviously, basically wants to play Data Vault. In this tournament, pretty much every single deck that was running a green base that was not Sabine and not Han Green was running Data Vault, basically. And because the 3 extra HP is very big deal, and the 10 extra card is not that big of a deal. So this is something that is very important to understand. And if you guys want to understand why Qi'ra wins tournament, even though he's playing 52, 54 cards, is because it doesn't, running more than 50 cards is a downside, but it's not a significant downside. It's not statistically hugely significant. So obviously in the case of Qi'ra, he runs 52 cards a little bit for no reason, so it's definitely wrong. But if you're running Data Vault, you get rewarded for running extra card. You get 3 extra HP, and 3 extra HP is very significant. And what I'm saying is like it's only going to get better because as the card pool expands bigger and bigger, the amount of card that you can run into your deck means that the cost of diluting your deck, of diluting your good cards is going to be lesser and lesser of a cost as time goes by. So Data Vault is really a strong base that has been quite underplayed right now, and is gonna and I think this tournament is a huge coming out for the card, and we're definitely gonna see a way more Data Vaults moving forward into the game, because it turns out that getting HP for extra cards in your deck is 100% worth it, because you are trading something that ultimately is relatively unlikely to make a big difference into your deck, obviously depending on what kind of deck you're playing, and the 3 extra HP is a big deal in terms of it makes it so, because HP in this game is so much more important than in game like Magic, because whenever your opponent has lethal in 1 action or lethal 2 actions, that makes such a big difference, and it just completely changed the dynamic of the game and the way you play the game. So yeah, Data Vault, a huge coming out for Data Vault. We'll see if this trend continues, of course. It's only 1 tournament after all, but this is a huge coming out for Data Vault. Data Vault was not only run into Qi'ra, it was run in almost every single green deck that was not Han or Sabine. Vader 4 might become meta. I'm saying might because obviously whenever a deck like this comes out, the top 25 that we saw was not just a lonely performance. We saw a 6.3% of Vader 4, so there were definitely multiple Vader 4 into top 64. Was it just an element of surprise, people taking people by surprise, the deck people taking by surprise, or is it really something that's going to persist? We'll find out, but definitely the leader had made a strong impression, in this tournament, and definitely something that I'm looking forward to see. If this leader can break through, it would be nice to have another. It would be to have another competitive leader from set 4. Right now, the leader of set 4 have been relatively shy. Kazuda still struggling to make performances. Same for Piet, but Vader 4 might be the leader that ends up making it. Meta is pretty much what we were expecting. The only exception was Qi'ra, which definitely overperformed compared to what I was expecting. But once again, there's true easy explanation for this. The K2OD influencing the meta in such a massive way. And of course, the lack of Palpatine and Hard Control, which definitely helped the performance of this deck. I know that for a fact that those decks struggle into those two decks, so definitely a big deal that those decks were not heavily represented. And if this was something that was planned by the K2OD crew, that was definitely a great meta call. And finally, of course, last but not least, the meta is extremely healthy. What a massive difference. We went from the Django meta, which was probably the worst meta we've ever had on Star Wars Limited, and now we're going into probably the best meta we've ever had. Like, this might be the best meta game we've ever had in Star Wars Unlimited in terms of variety. Once again, it remains to be confirmed. It's only one tournament. But it could be the healthiest meta, and it is probably the healthiest tournament in terms of meta tournaments that we've seen ever. The most played deck representing only 10% of the meta is definitely very, very significant. Obviously, there is a little bit of forced kind of diversity done by the fact that you get a showcase if you're the highest performing leader of your thing. So this kind of like skew the numbers a little bit, but even that, it is great to see the meta being so diverse, and I'm sure playing this tournament was probably a lot more enjoyable than playing in one of the 3 other sector qualifiers we had so far. So obviously, the bans had a massive impact on the game, and if some people, if there's still some people out there who argue that the ban was not a good thing, like, I don't know what else I can tell you. Like, just look at the difference of the meta we had in this compared to the previous set. It's literally light and day in terms of diversity. Anyway, thank you so much for following this video. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time for the upcoming videos. We have some really great announcements concerning the Enigma community. So stay tuned for more. And I'll see you next time.